Welcome to The Dreamboat. This is where we explore everything to do with dreams.
We are sponsored by the DRI, Centre for Dream Studies, and you can find out more about our work in the show notes.
You can join us here every fortnight or at one of our dream courses, workshops, or retreats. Thank you for coming on board.
You know those type of dreams where you find yourself in a wood and you don't know the wood, but you think, I've been here before in my dream in this wood. What is actually going on? And it really feels like a coming home. It's like an old house that you keep going back to in a dream. And there is a sense of, as I just said, of coming home, that this is really familiar. But you know when you wake, you cannot place that at all anywhere. And that it is a place that you regularly go to somewhere in your dreams. So what actually is going on with this kind of phenomenon? And I'm joined again by my co-host, Dave Billington from the DRI. So, Dave, I know this comes up quite a lot. And at the DRI, we have quite a few interesting theories around places in dreams. Tell me a bit more about what it means for you.
First of all, I think it's worth looking at it as ever, in a couple of different layers, maybe. So there's the psychological aspect to it, which is about personal experience and the individual experience, as opposed to something that's a bit more universal or collective. And I remember many episodes ago, we took a question from somebody who was saying, who was asking, why am I dreaming always about my old school and my old neighborhood? It's a place that I don't visit anymore. You remember that one?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
And, and that was, there's real value in talking about that. Why do we go back to certain places that we have experienced before? And a big part of that, I think, or a potential part of that, at least, is what's unresolved in the psyche that relates to that particular time and place. And what is it about what you're living through and living in now that makes that relevant? So where in your life now do you feel like you felt when you were at that school and that age? Right? So it's a handy reminder in a way of the psyche indicating to you, this is where you are in yourself, in your past. And there's something worth understanding here. So there's that aspect to it. And that's something that I relate to on a personal level in terms of dreams of that, it's a distinctive landscape where I grew up in British Columbia, in it's not quite wilderness, but in the woods and rural, let's put it that way. And it takes me back to a certain time in life and something that was very formative for me if I'm visiting that particular landscape. So that's something that's very personal, very clear, that people can kind of go, oh, yes, that was me. That was then. I recognize that place. It's a little bit different from what you were talking about, though, isn't it? Of there's a familiar place in a dream and it's known in the dream. But when you wake up, you say, oh, well, that's not in my waking life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've got one again from my own. It started in childhood and all the way through until a few years back. And I think, again, I might have mentioned this when we talked about, the last time we talked about places in dream in answer to the school question. And like you, I grew up on the other seaboard from Dave. I spent some time in Quebec as a kid, and it was by the St. Lawrence, which would freeze in the winter and produce these most amazing ice sculptures naturally. And I had a dream for many years, which I used to call my ice station zebra dream, of sort of like it was hard to describe. It came in different forms, but the sea was always frozen or around it was frozen. Sometimes I felt I was in the Southern Ocean, but I was on the land looking out at the frozen sea, and there was often a cafeteria or something that was there, a building on the edge of this ice waste where you could go to. And the dream was regular. It would come up. I would have it once or twice a year for for decades. And I often was curious about what it actually meant. And I had a feeling it related to childhood, but was unsure. And there's obviously more to it than that. But I went back to where I lived as a child, just outside of Montreal, about, I suppose, 10 odd years ago. So that was the last time I had the dream. And with my sister, and I walked past this area and I suddenly realised it was my dream. And of course, I was only a young child, so I don't remember much of the sort of landscape as such. But this was exactly the place. This was like a shelter area on the edge of the St. Lawrence where people would go and they could watch. And there was like a little canal area along the side of it. It's just on down from some famous rapids. And I suddenly thought, oh my God, that's the place I go to in my dream. And since then, I've never dreamt it again, which I find really quite interesting, as if something of going back to this sort of, it was traumatic time as a kid in many ways. As living in these extreme climates can be quite tough for a child. And yes, something of that had obviously haunted my psyche in my dream space. And going back to childhood, I reconnected with something and almost reconnected with part of myself that had got lost and kept exploring it, I think, in some way in my dream life. And so this place that I thought I didn't know and my psyche had manufactured into all sorts of frozen landscapes suddenly was real. And I obviously reconnected with part of myself. And there was healing in that, one of a better description.
Something that was frozen in time, perhaps?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's rife, isn't it? With sort of Jungian imagery. Yeah. But yes, definitely. And so I often wonder when we have these dreams about certain places that we go back to, how much of it actually is a place that we have been to, but we don't remember. And the psyche has conveniently saved it up as that's a useful image.
Yeah.
It's got some attachments to of some kind.
Well, that opens up that side of how the psyche uses imagery in order to reflect back our inner states to us.
Yeah.
And that idea of there's something being familiar. Familiar is a feeling. Familiar isn't a place. It's a response to a place.
Yeah, it's a very good point.
So when the material that's there, or something that's trying to come up, and it is about, it is known in some way, but there needs to be an image that gets connected to it. And so maybe it's not about it being that particular place, but it's the sense of it being familiar. That's what generates the dream. Even though when you wake from it, you kind of go, oh, well, that's not actually somewhere I know. And more likely, in my case at least, and lots of people that I've worked with, it's like, oh, it's a bit of that place and it's a bit of that other place, and it kind of reminds me of this other thing. And when you follow those associations, then there's almost always something interesting that comes from that as well. And that's the lovely thing about the psyche it's not a literal reflection of the world that we experience when we're waking. Which sometimes you hear people talk about it almost sounds like, in kind of memory consolidation and so on, that it's that literal reflection. And it's not. It's always metaphoric and it's always symbolic. And so what that means is that it can put things together, or rather things get put together. I don't know, subject object get very confused in that space. Things get put together in order to reflect something that would be really hard to explain, maybe impossible to explain conceptually. That there's a piece of me that was in that house, that I grew up in, and there's a piece of me that is from that experience I had when I was abroad that time. And there's a piece of me which is about that room downstairs in my house right now. And here's a place which brings all of those together as an experience. And that's a lot of words, like picture paints 1,000 words, right? There's a lot of words to describe something that is just present in, I'm in this room and here's what I'm feeling, here's what I'm experiencing at this moment.
I think, and particularly going back to a particular house or a building of some kind, I'm always intrigued when clients present that, because often we see and we often know that the psyche likes to use the symbol of the house as the symbol of self. And so going back into the house with a client using, say, the waking dream technique, which is obviously the technique that we have developed at the DRI to enable people to relive their dreams, to find out what meaning might be in there for them. Going back into a house that a client regularly goes to as a place that they might not recognize in the outside world is such good fun, because you know you're going back into them in some way. And each of the rooms holds, as you say, something familiar that needs to be recaptured in some way or put to bed in some way, if it's a childhood part that's not settled.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful way of working, going to places in dreams.
Yeah. And I think when we're discussing dreams, maybe it might be before or after we do the dream revisitation, kind of, looking at what the symbolism might be. Obviously there's the associations, as I said, but what kind of a place is this? Because a home or a house is different from a hospital, and there's places, or there are places that we would recognize as being important in terms of alchemical symbology: the kitchen, the workshop, and the laundry. Absolutely, yeah, and the lab, the laboratory. These are the places that where things are mingled and transformed. Some of the places, and there's other interesting things to think about. And what happens? There's a place of education. So is this about going back to your school days, or is this about there's something to learn here?
Yes, lovely point.
If it's a hospital, if it's a clinic, if it's an ambulance, whatever else it is, it's like, okay, so it's about healing. This is really important, and how it relates to the elements that are there. Think of other emergency services. If it's the fire department is there, or and the police, who enforce the rules, who keep the boundaries, and maybe impose structure or maintain structure within the psyche in this case as well. So there's that symbology, not necessarily just about place, but kind of what goes on in this place.
Yeah, they're lovely questions, and each question opens up the place for more to be discovered, and the place itself then opens up. It's very, very interesting. You talked, when we were discussing what we were going to mention as part of this as a topic, you mentioned spiritual geography. Do you want to say a bit more about that? What you mean by spiritual geography? Because it's such a great term.
It is a great term, isn't it? Yeah. And again, it kind of opens up in a few different directions. So one is about, again, on the personal level, that there can be the constructed environment and there can be the natural environment. And as a rule of thumb, as with any rule of thumb in dream work, you have to really pay attention to whether it's appropriate with the particular person at a particular time. But a rule of thumb is that when there's natural imagery, that's when you're getting in touch with your nature, something about your true nature, not your constructed self, not your conditioned self, not the egoic self or the persona that's created to live in the world, but something that is truly about your nature. And being able to pay attention to that and move towards it can release energy in a dream in a really beautiful way. And it takes you to these places, which I'm thinking about people that I've worked with, where they revisit them as places which are a sacred pool or a particular forest or a glade, somewhere that they revisit, and it maybe takes different forms, but they know when they're there, it's like, okay, here I am. I'm in my soul now.
Yeah, lovely.
I'm in touch with something deeply, deeply personal to me. And that's where, when it connects out into the transpersonal realm or into something that's in the collective or the universal as well.
Yeah, I was feeling that sense of that coming home. And when somebody's in touch with that, it feels like a safe space as well. It's the place is peaceful, tranquil. As you say, it's got a soul-like vibe about it that you even recognise at some core level in the dream while you're dreaming, in the dream itself.
Yeah, yeah, it's that a form of lucidity. Our colleague Melinda Powell would say, it's not that you're conscious that you're dreaming, but there's something in you that recognizes that this is a place that is good for you. It's not just a physical place. It's just a place where I'm in touch with something, and there's a deeper experience there. But there's lots of other different kinds of experiences that come along as well, and it connects to the idea of spiritual geography as being connected to where you are in your body when you're dreaming. And in terms of working with, again, waking dream process, which is about connecting image to felt sensation, that there's so much to be gained from just paying attention to where you are in the body and what's the experience there. So as you're dreaming, dreams don't happen in your head; they happen in your whole body. But as you pay attention to them, as you're feeling the emotions or just the subtle feelings that come up in relation to the dream experience, you'll find that they're held in different parts of your body. And often it is where we tend to feel more of our emotional experience, which is going to be abdomen and neck and shoulders and that kind of thing. But it might be anywhere. And there's exercises we do when we're training as transpersonal psychotherapists, which is to just inquire into different parts of the body and kind of go, what's the image that's here? What's the image what's the image in the knee? What's the image in the shin? What's the image in the ankle? And there's always something, for people who have that visual that visual capacity in terms of imagination. There is always something.
And it blows them away as well, because, if you say, oh, tune into your shin and what's there, and people come up with all sorts of amazing imagery and can't believe it.
The Dreamboat is a project of the DRI Centre for Dream Studies. If you're the kind of person who is fascinated by the mystery of dreams and you want to learn more about the transformational power of dream work, check out our workshops, lectures, retreats, and training courses at driccpe.org.uk. Also on the website, you can support the podcast and all of DRI's work by becoming a member for just over £30 a year. That gets you discounts and first access for our ticketed events, as well as access to videos and extra material online. That's driccpe.org.uk, and you can find the link in the show notes. Now back to the podcast. And so as you're going through landscapes in a dream, you're going through, maybe there's something that's feeling particularly lush and plentiful. Okay, so where does that reside in you? And what happens is you tune into that and let that experience start to resonate and spread out through the rest of your body. When you tune into a part of your body, and maybe it's the throat, and maybe it's the lower abdomen, and what it would be, the stomach, reproductive organs, and it's a very dry and arid place. Okay, well, how does that reflect your experience of what's going on in that place? What is it that is needed to balance out the elements that are present there?
Yeah, nicely put. I mean, it's a very buzzy expression, somatic work, but this really is somatic work. This is taking a dream, tracking it through somebody's body and saying, and what is there now? What if you tune into that image? Where do you feel that in your body? And that's so powerful. It means it gives the extra dimension that the psyche's presenting and holding within the image that's there of a place that the psyche has chosen is going to hold love or fear or whatever it is.
There's also that sense of what's the direction in the body.
Yes, this is a really good point, actually. This is something, again, that Nigel Hamilton's very interesting to hear.
Absolutely,
he's done a lot of research on directions of dreams.
That's true, yeah. Well worth looking into what he's written, which is on our website. And to hear him talk about it, it's really, really fascinating. But I think most people can relate to, if your throat is feeling particularly closed, and again, maybe that's the image that comes up is of a dry, arid landscape. And what's needed and what's to balance that out is something that is going to loosen it up, make it moist, bring the water. And then where is the water coming from? It's a very different experience of, is this something that needs to come from within and go out? And there's something about that expression and ascending in the body. Is it about something that needs to come in from above? Is it about that the rain needs to fall? And what would it be like to feel the rain, falling and hitting the top of your head and hitting and coming down and loosening things up in the body, and then what's available? Or is it about that there's something within the body that is looking to be expressed? There's a wave that's trying to build. So what direction is it going in the body? And we talk about it a lot, about ascent versus descent. Yeah. But it's also, and again, Nigel Hamilton talks about this a lot, the left versus the right, moving forward versus moving backward. And what that means in terms of are we advancing? Are we looking at the past? There's the relationship to masculine and feminine in terms of left and right. And again, people have their own associations with it, but there is something potentially universal in the symbolism that comes up around it as well.
And ascent and descent, I always learned that ascent was sort of becoming more spiritual. You're looking sort of almost beyond this plane of existence, whereas descent is you really do need to be on this earth.
Get your feet on the ground, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think the ascent, in whatever way you look at it, it's about getting perspective. And there is a perspective that comes from the thinking, getting up into the mind, getting up and being able to look at things rationally, objectively. And then there is something about continuing up beyond the personal mind and having that sense of there being a spiritual perspective on things, something that's beyond your individual concerns that can really help to free up what can feel very locked in when it's just in the personal realm.
Yeah, I was wondering for many people how often they might have a particular landscape that they return to, that they feel like they're coming home and it has a soul-like quality, but then go out into the world and one day, a bit like me, it suddenly becomes unlocked and you realise it isn't something that you've just made up. It actually really did exist at some time for you. I think that's quite interesting because I bet that's more common than we realise.
Yeah, that's quite a magical experience.
Yeah.
To find something from a dream and then experience it in real life. That's powerful.
Well, I should say to you that when we were discussing sort of topics for this series, and I actually dreamt that we would talk about this. And so and I thought, I'm going to mention this one to Dave because it came up in a dream as a potential topic. So again, it's that constant, the more you work with your dreams, the more the dreams will serve up some goodies for you, whether it's a new place or an old place or, a form of guidance in some way. It is such an amazing resource that... I know you and I love talking about it, and people who are regular listeners are also in love with what dreams can mean and present to us.
Absolutely, yeah. The aspect of landscape and geography was something that brought me into being interested in dreams. Oh. Yeah, of feeling... I think when I was young, when I was a child, and feeling like I was sort of off on the edge of nowhere, and it was difficult to think of, there's a whole world out there, but how do I access it? And then, but in dreams, influenced by, reading a lot and, being really interested in what was out in the world. But in dreams, I could visit these places. And I wasn't just dreaming, I probably dreamed more about the landscape I was living in as a child after I left that area. And there were things to work through there. But dreaming about places that were more exotic or unfamiliar. And that's what I was yearning for. There's that Freudian wish fulfillment side of it. I was looking for broader horizons. And that's what my life has brought me, thank goodness. But that's what I was attuned to. And I used to absolutely love waking from a dream with that delicious feeling of having been somewhere that would be at the ocean and nature and the sun is shining. And meanwhile, outside my window, there was 4 feet of snow and no light.
Exactly. Know that well. Yeah, it's just amazing, isn't it? And again, it's interesting also from a child's perspective, what wish fulfillment looks like and how it gets projected into a dream world. Like, as you say, just the whole ability to change the landscape that you're living in is the power of dreams. It can lead us into transformation before we're possibly allowed to enjoy the transformation of the wish fulfillment. It's it's a precursor dream for a child, and who knows what seeds get sown by that, so that when you become a young adult, you're almost unconsciously acting on something that perhaps you've dreamt.
Yeah. I think that's almost universally true, I think. But again, you might not always be aware of it.
Yeah.
And occasionally, then you kind of get that, oh, right, I dreamed this.
Yeah.
I dreamed this moment. Not quite the same thing as that place, but also like, oh, right, yeah, this, now I remember. It wasn't in my mind at all, but now I remember. Kind of like recording this episode for you.
Oh dear. Well, it was a good dream, and I'm glad that we've covered it as a topic, because I think it's rich with material, and I'm glad I have stopped dreaming my ice station zebra dream, because it used to get quite exhausting, and that's the other thing. If it's a landscape that stimulates perhaps negatively, I don't know. There was fear wrapped up in that from childhood and throughout. And so again, changing or talking about, as we've said before, just therapeutically working on your dreams, either with a therapist or with somebody else, telling people your dreams, often helps break it for you and helps you find the resolution that the psyche's looking for.
I've seen it so many times in working with people in their dreams, I've experienced it myself, and being escorted back into one of my own dreams in the waking dream process. The amazing transformation that when you go back with somebody, you revisit a dream, and there's a particular kind of landscape, and it has that a feeling of fear or stuckness or whatever it might be that's there. It's kind of a negative feeling, and being able to just stay with it and then tune into what's the antidote, what's needed. And usually you'll find, you look around in the dream and there's something there that will open up that transformation for you. And when you find that and you really start to stay with that, and then the landscape transforms because you transform your feeling. To go from frozen and into something that's more living. I've had similar dreams to that. To go from something that is dry to lush, and it's again, the dreams, the images, they come from our inner experience, they come from our feelings. And so when you learn how to tune into a different way of feeling, it transforms a landscape, and that feels absolutely magical when it happens, and it has resonance into the waking life then as well. Yeah, exactly. I think it's beautiful. I think you summed it up really nicely. So thank you, Dave. And we'll be interested to know what type of places you have visited on your dreams, whether known or unknown landscapes of some kind. But for now, for me, sweet dreams and sweet landscape dreams. And for me, keep dreaming and keep sharing your dreams, including with us.
So thank you for joining us for this week's episode. Don't forget to like us and leave comments on your favourite podcast platform. As I'm sure you know, that's the way we build an audience for the Dreamboat podcast, and also to spread news about dreaming. And as we said, there are many ways you can share your dreams at the DRI, the Dream Research Institute.
Yes, we have courses, events, and workshops, and we want to hear from you. So check out the show notes for links, or find us on Instagram and on our Facebook page and on our website at driccpe.org.uk. And if you want to explore your dreams further, or you would like to support us, you can join the DRI as a member for just £30 a year. As a member, You will get discounts for all of our events and short courses. You'll get our newsletter with latest dream research news, and we'll also be adding other special member benefits during the year. Of course, members' dreams will always be given preference for reading on the podcast Dream of the Week slot. So go to the link on the show notes and become a DRI member today. Keep dreaming and keep sharing your dreams.